Hello, everyone. My name is Rabbi Ari Jun. I am the director of Cincinnati's Jewish Community Relations Council, and I'm so happy that this many people can come and join us. We still have folks streaming in through the waiting room. My colleague Brant Schultz is going to continue admitting folks, but I do want us to go ahead and get started because we have so much to do. Let me just say as a word of opening that by being present here right now in this moment, you're showing that you care about your students and about children with whom you work. And I couldn't be more grateful to have you present for this. I come from the Jewish Community Relations Council, but we have representatives here from the Holocaust and Humanities Center, the Institute for Curriculum Services, the Jewish Family Service, and the American Jewish Committee Cincinnati. And all of us have really one purpose, one goal in this session today, which is to help you help the people you help. We will give you different perspectives and viewpoints and hopefully facilitate you taking better care of the children about whom we care so much. And again, I couldn't be more grateful to have you here. You may have noticed that this session is recording. I just want to clarify that while we are recording this session, anything that is recorded that includes feedback or questions, anything of the matter from participants will not be shared publicly. We want to make sure this is a safe space for you all to do the things that you need to do so that you can take away what you need. We will share a full recording of this, however, with everyone who registered for the program so that they can go back and reference notes and things like that as they try to take this and move forward. We're going to get started in 2 seconds with the meat and potatoes of this program, but I do want to let you see what our plan is for the day. In just a moment, I will be finished speaking. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Justin Kirshner, who is the director of AJC Cincinnati. And that's the American Jewish Committee Cincinnati. I'll pick it back up from him for a few minutes to talk about what we're seeing in Cincinnati and how we can help. My colleague at the Jewish Family Service, Leah Marcus, who is a licensed independent social worker, will be sharing some of her experiences and understandings about how to support our Jewish students. And closing out the presentations will be Dr. Lauren Bairnsfather and Dori Gerber from the Holocaust and Humanities Center and Institute for Curriculum Services, respectively, who will be talking about the classroom space during this time. We'll have about 15 minutes for Q&A, which I'm sure will be insufficient, but we're going to do our best. Let me also note that we got oodles of wonderful questions and guidances in the registration process. No doubt we will not be able to answer them all, but we are going to do our best. If there's anything we don't touch upon during this session that you really want follow-up on, please reach out. We will be sending out more follow-up resources to all of you, and we would be happy to cover anything that we may have missed during this very short 1 hour. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Justin. I'm going to turn off my screen share so he can take center stage. And Justin, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here today to shed some light into the most recent unprovoked attack against innocent Israelis and the existential implications it has on the soul of the global Jewish community. This tragic unfolding of events has garnered international attention, touches the very essence of humanity, showcases some of the collective desire for peace, and highlights the deep-rooted challenges to achieving it. With the time I have today, I will do my best to uncover significant aspects of this conflict and why, especially in this moment in history, it is imperative to understand. Not just for the safety and security of your Jewish students and colleagues, but for those who seek a better outcome for all people in Israel and the Palestinian territories. I'll begin by touching on what transpired this past week or so, followed by the international response, and concluding with some key points to take away regarding what many see as a never-ending back and forth of violence and suffering. Last Saturday, 2 Saturdays ago, during the sacred high holiday time for Jews, Hamas, an Iran-backed, globally designated terror organization, and sadly, the current government of the Gazan people, led an unprecedented onslaught against over 1,000 innocent Israelis, leading to the single most Jewish death in one day since the Holocaust. There are numerous reports, pictures, live stream videos confirming the horrifying death, violation, and kidnapping of mothers, babies, teenagers, elderly, whole families, and more, solely because they were Jewish. Additionally, over 5,000 rockets have been and continue to be indiscriminately fired into Israeli population centers from Gaza in the south, as well as from Lebanon in the north by Hezbollah, another Iran-backed terror organization. In response, the IDF launched a full-scale military effort to eliminate the Hamas terror organization in totality. This has further exacerbated an already bad humanitarian situation in Gaza, and at this time, Hamas still won't release those they've kidnapped and are impeding the evacuation of their own citizens from the north to the Egyptian border in the south. Israel will not stop until Hamas is eliminated, doing its moral and physical best to preserve innocent life. As of today, the Egyptian border was open to allow foreign nationals to exit and additional humanitarian aid to come through. A partial ceasefire will also occur. What is critical to take away from this portion is that Israel is not at war and never was with the Palestinian people. They're at war with the terror organization Hamas, who with no shame publicly calls for the annihilation of Israel and the Jewish people, builds terror infrastructure in residential areas in Gaza, uses their citizens as human shields, hides weapons caches in UN-run schools and mosques, sends rockets into Israel, and most disheartening of all is that they value death over life and teach this to their children. Don't take my word for it. Hamas and this brand of Islamic extremism is proud of this. As I hope you can infer, this behavior continues to make the security situation for Israel very precarious in Gaza, as well as in the West Bank, where a different Palestinian government, the Palestinian Authority, hasn't allowed an election in over 15 years, and whose leader wrote his PhD on Holocaust denial. There is friction between Palestinians, just as there is in Israeli society and in many other cases. In essence, there is gray area to this conflict, but not as it relates to any justification of this most recent unprovoked evil carried out by Hamas. To touch on the international response, the US, along with leaders from France, Germany, the UK, Italy, and others, affirmed their ironclad support for the state of Israel against Hamas terror. Many leaders of those countries are visiting Israel now to receive on-the-ground reports. 40 countries have citizens who were either murdered or are currently being held kidnapped in Gaza, including 29 Americans killed and 15 still missing. Leaders in international organizations have called for ceasefire, diplomatic efforts from Muslim-majority countries in the region, UN involvement, humanitarian assistance, sanctions, condemnations, and public demonstrations. It is important to note that amidst the flurry of news and social media about all of these efforts, they are being conducted within an active state of war, where international standards of asymmetric warfare and humanitarian law need be considered. Many of these public demonstrations, however, throughout the world, specifically those in support of Palestinians, happen to be violent, with chants for gassing the Jews, the destruction of Israel, and vocal support for Hamas's savage attack. Please know that these demonstrations and the accompanying rhetoric don't uplift the Palestinian cause, nor do they simply seek to castigate Israel as if this onslaught by Hamas was their fault, but rather incite fear, violence, and ultimately calls for death to Jews. These chants happened right here in Cincinnati this past weekend, and sadly, unassuming social justice activists, like some of your students, are at best unaware and at worst complicit. A few key points to take away before I'll turn it back to Rabbi June is we must recognize the profound human toll of any war throughout history. In conflicts such as these, innocent lives are disrupted, dreams are shattered, and the very core of human dignity is challenged. If one stands for humanity, then there should be no justification or moral equivalence drawn in support of Hamas. This blind or intentional support and indifference from far too many for this terror devastate the Jewish community. Point number 2. The Iranian regime is the global exporter of terrorism and has vowed, like Hamas and Hezbollah, to obliterate Israel and the Jewish people. This isn't about the conflict. It is about demonizing, devaluing the lives of, and the global call to kill Jews. This doesn't just affect Jews, however, but Americans and Western democracy. Ask yourself, What would you do if your neighbor was sworn to your infinite death? My last point is that this history of this conflict is marked by nuance and complexity. It's a history filled with pain, longing, and misunderstanding. At the core of this conflict is a common struggle for dignity, for mutual respect, and self-determination. Only by acknowledging the complexity of this history can we hope to foster a constructive dialogue and find prospects for peace. We hope as educators you are working towards this end. Thank you.
Justin, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing. One of the things I suspect you can hear in Justin's voice, and I can vouch for it on a personal level, is the amount of pain that's going around our community right now in the midst of this context. And that's something that we need to grapple with and recognize as a reality of this moment, is that there are a lot of communities in this moment feeling intense personal pain. That includes the Jewish community. It probably includes your Muslim students and many others. And there is really nothing we need more in this moment than humanity in the face of all of that. So I'm going to move us back to my slides here. I have a little bit of material I want to share about the contemporary circumstances of anti-Semitism in our schools in particular. That is to say that these aren't general statistics or things that you could find, in generic spaces on the web, but this is really what we are seeing here in Cincinnati at this time. So I'm going to try to touch on 3 things in the next 10 minutes. We'll see how I do about that. The first is to go over the current situation. As of 10 days ago or 9 days ago, what's the status quo? I want to make some specific observations about what anti-Semitism looks like in this moment. I'm going to give particular examples of what things our community would consider to be hateful to it at this time. And then I'm going to lay out some resources about how we can be of assistance to you. And I'll note, I say JCRC in there, but it applies to our full Jewish community. We have a really rich web of organizations that all would love nothing more than to support educators during this time. So let me answer this first question. What is the current situation? I pulled together a few statistics to help to explain, to paint a picture of what we're seeing right now. We are at a high watermark for anti-Semitism globally and in the United States. To give you one simple statistic, every year, almost, aside from 2 for the last 10 years, the United States had new all-time highs in anti-Semitic incidents. 10 years ago, that all-time high was 700 anti-Semitic incidents per year in the United States. Last year, it was 3,500. That's 5 times higher than it was a decade earlier. So anti-Semitism is a very, very acute problem in our community right now and in our country. Cincinnati is not immune, as you can see from these numbers on the screen. At the JCRC, the Jewish Community Relations Council, we track anti-Semitic incidents in the greater Cincinnati area. The high watermark that we are experiencing is that in the last 12 months, barring what happened since Israel's war began, we saw a little over 1 anti-Semitic incident per week. And for point of reference, that only included about 9 incidents within schools. Since the war in Israel began, so since Saturday the 7th, we have had 10 anti-Semitic incidents that I'm aware of in our school systems in Cincinnati. We had 10 incidents, I should say, total. Every single one of those 10 has taken place within schools. Surely there are more that I don't know about, but I hope that this helps to paint a very clear picture that we are seeing major rises in serious incidents of anti-Semitism. We make a point of not sharing the identifying details about our incidents because we want to maintain confidentiality with our families and our children and our schools as well. But I can share a few examples because they have happened in enough places right now that they are no longer identifying of any particular instance. We have seen chants of death to Israel and death to the Jews in multiple of our schools. We have seen students pressuring other students to wear colors that support Hamas in particular in their school systems when they go to school. And we have seen swastikas being used in various schools to target and harass Jewish students. And that is not an exhaustive list of examples. Those are just the examples where we have redundancies so that I can share them with you in this kind of moment. So the problem is very much out of control. Let me talk a little bit about what anti-Semitism is and what it looks like right now. I know that for someone like me, these might seem like simple ideas, but this is what I spend most of my time working on, and I know that's not true for everyone. So let me offer you the best, admittedly improvable definition of anti-Semitism. They would agree with me, by the way, the IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, would agree that this is an improvable, a constant work in progress definition of anti-Semitism, because they too call it a working definition. And they say that anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews, which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, toward Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. That's all very heady, and we could spend an hour just dissecting that. Allow me to go into specific types of behavior, which I think we can identify as anti-Semitic and what we can expect to see in a moment like this. I broke this into two different sections. The first is what we might see amongst students and their peers. And the second is examples of anti-Semitism, which I'm sad to say we could wind up seeing also coming from institutions of education. Between students and their peers, types of anti-Semitism we can expect to see in a moment like this are the delegitimization of Zionism or Israel. Jews have a historic connection to the land of Israel going back thousands of years. Zionism is an expression of Jewish longing to return to that homeland, which precedes the current conflict, which has been a thread of Jewish practice for as long as Jews have lived anywhere other than what is today called the land of Israel. Seeking to delegitimize the only Jewish state in existence in Jews' historic homeland, and that's not to say getting into the politics of what that currently looks like, but seeking to overall delegitimize it is a behavior that Jews collectively have a consensus perception is hateful to them. And as I think most of us would agree, minority and marginalized groups do have a right to define what they see as hateful to themselves. Other examples, demonization of Israelis in particular, in justifying the murder of civilians. I'm sad to say we've seen quite a bit of this in the last week, saying that all Israelis are evil, or saying that Israelis deserved the pogrom, the slaughter of 1,300 civilians a week and a half ago, is absolutely anti-Semitic behavior. It's the sort of thing we would certainly beg your help with addressing if it happens in your schools. Something we are seeing happen a lot, and some of the examples I alluded to are in this domain, the bullying and intimidation of Jewish students. Right now, this is taking place on and off of our educational facilities. We are seeing this both as cyberbullying in our community right now. We've seen an uptick in that, and we are seeing harassment and intimidation going on within our schools as well. And then this one is certainly complicated, and yet it should be simple at the same time in a sort of paradoxical way. It is absolutely unacceptable to hold our Jewish students based in the tri-state area or wherever else they might be around the world, assuming that they are not in Israel, to hold them accountable for Israel's action is something that the Jewish community identifies as being hateful behavior. Now, on the other side of the fence, here are some things that I would urge you to be aware of, to watch out for these happening within your schools, and to be our ally in making sure that they don't take place. I'm sad to say that I have seen these happening over the last week, so we need your help. The first is a failure to take Jewish students' complaints seriously. If a Jewish student tells you that they have experienced hateful behavior, we need you to act on that information urgently and seriously. Now, of course, we all know how kids can be, really at every age group, but we need to see you take these incidents seriously and investigate them in the way that you would against any other group, and take them to their logical, child-appropriate conclusions. Another form of anti-Semitic behavior that, again, we have seen take place in our schools, is expecting Jewish students to just sort of deal with it. That, oh, well, this is a complicated scenario. There's a lot of geopolitics going on here. So the Jewish students just need to be able to tolerate this as, a cost of being Jewish in this moment. It's absolutely unacceptable, and we are very, very happy to help you find nuanced way of addressing these issues. Similar to the top right of between students and their peers, sometimes teachers and educators expect Jewish students to be spokespeople for Israel. While you may have Jewish students who are comfortable doing so, it is not an appropriate default assumption to assume that they have the background or the comfort or the interest in doing that. And we ask you not to allow that to take place. And then finally, just like we wouldn't expect students to handle any other form of hate on their own, to say, you've got to settle your differences with students who might oppose your very existence, we can't see that happening with our Jewish students. It's just a very precarious place for us to be. And I beg you for your help in that. So speaking of asking for your help in that, let me tell you a bit about how we can help you. I would say that we have a spectrum of ways that we can assist schools in this moment, ranging from the totally reactive to the more or less proactive. I'm going to work my way from left to right, and I'll try to make these make sense to you. The first is, starting on the reactive side, incidents are going to happen. There are going to be anti-Semitic moments in your schools, I'm very sorry to say. The JCRC, the Jewish Community Relations Council, for which I work, helps schools to respond in these moments. Please, please reach out as early as possible if you've heard details about this maybe even happening, because the sooner we get into the situation, the better we can help you. Similarly, when incidents of anti-Semitism are going on or concern about it's going on, I know parents can sometimes be a very challenging, let's say, constituency group with whom to work. We liaise with our Jewish parents in the community all the time, and it would be our pleasure to help you work with them to find good, just outcomes to whatever issues they might be encountering. Similarly, as you are interacting with your community, whether it's to respond to an anti-Semitic incident or to get ahead of anti-Semitism or Islamophobia, whatever it might be, you don't have to go it alone. We are happy to help you craft messages using best practices from across the country. Every single one of our organizations that's represented on the call today works with a national network that has amazing tools and resources. And we would be happy to share those with you to help you do the best job you can, and I'll even say to make your lives a little bit easier. So I guess I've covered number 4 a bit as well. We work with these national networks. The JCPA, the Jewish Council of Public Affairs, the AJC, the American Jewish Committee, has a major national network. The JFNA, the Jewish Federations of North America, and so on and so on. We work with incredible groups, and we can bring you into conversation with them. If we don't have the resource you need, we'll find you it. Here's an important one, especially as the weeks and potentially months of this conflict drag on. We have a relatively robust Israeli community in this city. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should only work with Israelis. I'm not so biased as to believe there's only one reasonable, true narrative for understanding this moment. But I do work at the Jewish Community Relations Council, and that means that I can help to connect you with Israelis of a variety of ages to come into your classrooms, to sit down and have lunch with your kids, to share some humanity, to put a face to what might seem like a conflict across the globe. All you have to do is reach out, and we have a docket filled with people eager to help put a real face on something that might seem very distant. I would be more than happy to help make that happen, and I promise that might head off some of the incidents you might otherwise see. And finally, we have oodles and oodles of resources to help in moments like this. You'll see a few of these in just a few moments from ICS and HHC, but we also intend to share after this call some lists of resources for teachers, for parents, and for students, age appropriate and properly calibrated to the right audience of how to make it through this really difficult moment. So with all that said, we are here to help. There should be a here on that slide. Rabbi Ari John, it is my pleasure to do so. Also, Jeremy Spiegel, our assistant director, We are here at your disposal, and I appreciate your time. So I'm going to turn it over to Leah Marcus. Leah, are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you, Ari. Let me share my screen really quickly. Okay, here we go. All right, so my name is Leah Marcus. I'm an independently licensed social worker at the Jewish Family Service in Cincinnati, and I'm the director of youth mental health services there at the agency. Right now, our mental health and wellness priorities for the youth and young adult populations in our community are providing Jewish teens the opportunities to feel connected and supported by their Jewish and non-Jewish peers, as well as allowing them the opportunity to share their thoughts and feelings in response to the war in Israel and Gaza. And finally, allowing them the opportunity to reflect on their big feelings and identify ways that they could take care of themselves as they consume the news and access social media, which a lot of parents, and I'm sure educators are receiving a lot of questions about how to safely consume the news. We received a lot of questions about a trauma-informed care approach. And when it comes to connection and support and using a trauma-informed care lens, this would be where we realize how trauma can affect the people that are affected, are impacted. So we really want to focus on having conversations and communicating rather than focusing on violent images and looking at videos or sharing images in classroom settings when we're discussing the conflict in Israel. The classroom is a central place for a typical student's day. And beyond the safety that the space can offer a student, it will be also important to identify spaces that are safe for students who are struggling with challenging emotions, as well as processing events, whether that be a mindfulness room or a Zen den, or all of the above, as long as students know that they can go there and have a quiet moment with supportive staff or a safe adult. It's important at this time to validate and reassure students of all the ways that adults in their lives, both at school and their religious communities, are working hard to protect their bodies, and reassuring students of their physical safety is paramount. Next is where you again, using that trauma-informed lens, we're focusing on recognizing symptoms of trauma, and we're creating a system where we're responding to a student's trauma or experiences rather. So we're providing opportunities for students and young people to share their thoughts, their feelings about current events, as well as their own personal family and community experiences. I've shared with many people and had so many conversations over the last 10 days or so. It's become difficult to find a Jewish individual who has not been impacted personally by this war, and the connections in the Jewish community are deep. Family and friends, educators, community leaders, and travel experiences have all created a strong bond to the state of Israel for all students, no matter their age. So it's important to go into conversations with Jewish students knowing that there's a strong connection built already. managing those difficult feelings begins with leading your educators and classrooms and students and your district with a great deal of empathy. And that starts with leading with compassion and expressing gratitude and thanks, and being a role model in that sense. Also remembering that nobody is an expert in this area. Certainly, no one expects our district administrators to be mental health or Israel-Palestine experts and know exactly what to say, but encouraging everyone to ask questions to understand an individual student's experience and avoid making assumptions is an important thing to remember. We should not hide our feelings from students, but share feelings that are appropriate and empathic. Overall, sending out a clear message that we all must be patient right now, and remembering that students will manage their emotions in many different ways. It's also important to remember that sometimes that there are no words, and silence is also a necessity, because it encourages mindfulness, and it allows a student's brain to process emotions without suppressing them. Is anyone here familiar with the fight-flight response? You can kind of give the thumbs up or any emoji in your... Awesome. So the fight-flight response is our physiological response to a stressful situation. And those stressful situations activate our sympathetic nervous system. That is your flight response. So silence, on the other hand, is going to allow your body to engage your parasympathetic nervous system, and that will engage a resting state, which will help your body and your mind calm down. You can help students connect and build that resting state by deep breathing and body scan exercises, which are available on YouTube and other videos. Mind Peace Cincinnati is one great resource I know that a lot of our schools are connected to. And this can help our students move forward throughout the day. Although there have been a lot of recommendations that teens and students delete forms of social media, Jewish Family Service is actually encouraging our families and educators to make a decision in collaboration with their teen or student. This is, as a parent of a teenager, this is not a hill that I would like to die on with my teen, is deleting their social media. It sounds actually terrible to do that. Rather, having a conversation and communicating about accessing reliable forms of news media and talking through what is an appropriate video to watch versus not, and having a conversation if a student or a child does come across a violent video, makes a huge difference for how that media is digested. Creating plans for students in collaboration with parents for how that news is digested is also very important. When students see something on social media that's upsetting, encourage them to draw from familiar self-care techniques, setting timers for 10 to 20 minutes to stop themselves from scrolling when the timer goes off, asking them to spend a specific amount of time to do something that calms them down when they are feeling overwhelmed or stressed out, like going outside and taking a walk, or listening to music, or talking to a friend, or going for a run. Reporting violent images to school leaders and getting a response immediately from those leaders is also incredibly important. And they should receive appropriate responses in term is also an important message for teens right now. This is, again, my contact information. If anybody has any questions, my office phone number and the JFS helpline is below it. And I'm going to pass it on to our colleagues at ICS.
Thank you so much, Leah. I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to speak with you all. Thank you for welcoming me as a representative of the Institute for Curriculum Services. I'm Dory Gerber, the Director of Professional Learning for the Institute for Curriculum Services. I'm going to share my screen for just a moment and share with you some of the resources from an instructional position that can help you or educators in your schools in having conversations about the Hamas-Israel war. So before we do that, though, I just want to give you a little bit of an overview of the Institute for Curriculum Services, who we are and what we do as a national education organization. Our mission is dedicated to improving the quality of K-12 education on topics related to Jews, Judaism, and Jewish history here in the United States. And the way that we do that as an academic organization is by developing standards-aligned curricula that are rooted in primary sources to support educators when topics of Jews, Judaism, and Jewish history come across state standards, as well as the news, right? These current events. Although we approach that from a historical perspective, which I'll explain in just a moment. And also at ICS, we provide professional development to educators through school districts, organizations, cultural organizations, museums, things of that nature. All of our resources are free, our professional development and our curriculum. Ultimately, what we believe is that an excellent education is essential to building a strong civil society where all people can flourish. Now, what you see on the screen here are the different topics that we offer our curriculum and our professional development on. The purple being the topics themselves, the blue being the somewhat subheads in the social studies umbrella and under which they fall. And I want to point out specifically our history of the Arab-Israeli conflict using primary sources curriculum, as well as our history of European anti-Semitism curriculum, to being two of the most applicable resources for the most recent situation that we are discussing here today. And then, as an organization that is dedicated to promoting accurate history on Jews, Judaism, and Jewish history, taking a historical perspective, we do not create curriculum focused on the current events. But given the magnitude of Hamas's terrorist attack on October 7th and the events that have since unfolded, we as an educational organization felt that it was very important to be able to provide support for teachers. It is likely that as the events in Israel and the region continue to unfold, they will likely spur difficult but important conversations with students in your school. So we wanted to be able to provide educators with tools to help facilitate those conversations. So in the chat box, I'm going to share a link with you all that is going to take you directly to the resource that we created as a means to provide support in this time of crisis. And in it, you'll find our curriculum on the history of the Arab-Israeli conflict, highlighting direct connections to the events of October 7th in regards to the Yom Kippur War and the 50th anniversary of that. And also building on a lot of what Leah said, there will be guidelines and support for having those difficult discussions in your classrooms with students, creating brave spaces to allow for those conversations to happen, as well as resources to support the understanding of making sense of the news through best practices of vetting sources, understanding what is the difference between misinformation and disinformation, things of that nature to support an instruction in that capacity. And again, very much building on what Leah said, to help students navigate how they're receiving their news through social media and processing that news. And like she said, it is unlikely that they will delete their apps. So let's teach them how to navigate through them appropriately. Now, I want to just end with sharing with you my contact information, which I will also add in the chat box. And I want to let anyone here on this call know that if you are interested in having professional development on the Arab-Israeli conflict curriculum, our history of European anti-Semitism curriculum, or any of the other topics in our catalog, to help provide educators with an opportunity for content development or a deepening understanding of the content that is also combined with pedagogical best practices for instruction, please reach out to me. We are here to support you in the understanding of these topics, again, while providing those pedagogical best practices for instruction. So those are just some of the services that we can provide from an educational and instructional standpoint to support you during this time and other times of curriculum connections. So thank you so much for inviting me here today. And
Lauren's up, correct?
I think we're going to hand it over now to Dr. Lauren.
Thank you. Thank you all. So I wanted, first of all, I've already said thank you, but I want to say to my co-panelists, I've learned so much from all of you today, and to all of you teachers who have taken your time to be with us today. I'm really wowed by the number of participants, and it shows how timely and important this conversation is, how much we all needed it. So as you heard, I'm Lauren Bairnsfather. I was previously the director of the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh for 8 years. And I'm sitting in Pittsburgh right now, and I want to give you, for just a second, the view from Pittsburgh and what it looks like here for people in the Jewish community, for Jewish students, and for all teachers and all people who live here. We had a horrible community trauma nearly 5 years ago with the shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue building. And as Rabbi Myers of the Tree of Life wrote in his blog last week, feels familiar. So we know that among you, teachers and students, people have experienced trauma. It's possible that the events of October 7th in Israel are triggering that trauma for other people. I know how hard it has been to be in Pittsburgh for the last week. So my heart is with everyone who is dealing with what's happening in the world right now. It's an honor that right now I'm here representing the Nancy and David Wolf Holocaust and Humanities Center, an organization I've been working with for the last 6 months or so. And we talked a bit about the Holocaust in terms of the attack on October 7th being the deadliest day since the Holocaust. I really want to recommend to all of you teachers, if you are not interacting with the Holocaust and Humanities Center, you should do it. So to put it very briefly, you should do it. So for 2 reasons I want to share with you. One of them is that we know that studying the Holocaust builds empathy in students, and it does lead to students who will speak up when they hear anti-Semitism, and that extends to speaking up when they hear any hate speech or any suggestion of hate. So that's the first thing. But the other reason that I really want to recommend going to the Holocaust and Humanities Center is that second part of their name, which is humanity. We've talked a bit about the protests that have been taking place around the world, and I understand that there was one in Cincinnati. And what those protests are demonstrating to me as a Holocaust scholar is the power of propaganda and dehumanization. And that's what's happening in real time. We are watching it. We're watching it. Learning about the Holocaust, we have very concrete examples of the dangers of propaganda and how dehumanization works and where those two things can lead. So learn about it, help your students to understand it, help them to see it, help them to be critical thinkers, which is another thing that happens when students learn about the Holocaust. But visit the Holocaust and Humanities Center for its focus on humanity. So let me say just a little bit more about that. When the HHC talks about humanity, and there's a whole humanity gallery, maybe some of you on this call have had a chance to visit it. It celebrates character strengths. And so in the context of the Holocaust, it could be rescuers, it could be righteous among the nations. In the context of today, 2023, the Holocaust and Humanities Center celebrates Cincinnati upstanders, community members who use their strengths to improve the world. And we also encourage students to be upstanders. So that may mean making small acts to address problems in the school, to address injustice that they see around them. And it could be that they do something very big. It could be that they do something small, but we know that they are empowered to do something. One word that we've heard a couple of times during the presentations today is empathy. I want to thank Leah for her presentation in Pittsburgh, the JFCS, and also we have a resiliency center here, as do all centers that have a hate crime, a hate attack like we had here. Those mental health professionals did so much for all of us to understand what we are going through as we process this information that's coming at us, to make it possible for us to show up for the students in our lives. So teachers, I applaud you for everything you do, which is so often really confronting terrible things that are happening around us and creating those safe spaces for students. Holocaust and Humanities Center will also equip teachers with those skills. So several things that the museum offers are field trips, curricular resources if you need them, professional development, excellent professional development opportunities. And I just want to close by saying that by dedicating your time, your very valuable time this afternoon for being with us, all of you are upstanders. And I thank you very much.